It's 2:04 p.m., May 11th, 1996. A DC-9 accelerates down runway 9 left at Miami International Airport. Destination, Atlanta. Flight time, 90 minutes. 105 passengers settle in for what should be a routine Saturday afternoon flight. But just 6 minutes later, the captain's voice crackles over the radio, telling air traffic control that they've lost everything.
We're losing everything. We're losing everything.
Shouts of fire! 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 Echo through the cabin. A flight attendant screams that the plane is completely on fire. The first officer desperately radios for an immediate return to Miami. Air traffic control responds with headings and altitudes, but within minutes, the radio falls silent. Controllers call repeatedly for ValuJet Flight 592. No response. Just static. At 2:13 p.m., 9 minutes after takeoff, the DC-9 had plummeted into the Everglades at nearly 500 miles per hour. The impact was so violent, the airplane virtually disintegrates. The largest piece recovered would be barely 3 feet long. All 110 souls on board are gone in an instant. But this wasn't a bomb. It wasn't terrorism. It wasn't even mechanical failure. It was 5 cardboard boxes in the cargo hold. Boxes that were ticking time bombs from the moment they were loaded. Boxes that nobody knew contained 144 oxygen generators, devices so dangerous they could burn at 500 degrees Fahrenheit, devices that should have had safety caps, devices that should never have been on that plane. How does a routine flight turn into one of the deadliest disasters in American aviation history in just 6 minutes? How does a simple maintenance task 3 months earlier seal the fate of everyone on board? And why did everyone in a chain of failures think they were doing the right thing? Before we begin, please consider subscribing for more aviation stories. This is the story of ValuJet Flight 592. Saturday morning, May 11th, 1996. Miami International Airport is buzzing with weekend travelers. It's a beautiful day. Temperatures in the low 80s, light winds, perfect flying weather. At the ValuJet gates, passengers are boarding Flight 592 to Atlanta. Families returning from vacation, business travelers heading home, a 4-year-old child traveling with his mother, so young he doesn't even need his own ticket, doesn't even appear on the manifest. In the cockpit, Captain Candalin Kubek runs through her pre-flight checks. 35 years old, nearly 9,000 flight hours under her belt. She's experienced, professional, competent. Beside her, First Officer Richard Hazen, 52, with over 6,400 hours of experience. These aren't rookies. These are seasoned professionals who've handled emergencies before. In fact, just 8 months earlier, Captain Kubek had dealt with smoke in the cabin on another flight. She'd handled it perfectly, turned back to the airport, landed safely, everyone walked away. She knew the procedures, she knew what to do. 3 flight attendants prepare the cabin for departure. They run through safety demonstrations that passengers barely watch. The same routine they've done hundreds of times. Check the exits, count the passengers, secure the galley. Routine. The plane itself, a DC-9-32, has been flying since 1969. 27 years old, but well-maintained, at least on paper. There are a few minor issues. The public address system had been acting up on the previous flight. The cockpit interphone is inoperative, but nothing unusual for an aging aircraft. Nothing that would ground it. But beneath the passenger cabin, in the forward cargo hold, something is terribly wrong. Earlier that morning, a ramp agent loaded 5 cardboard boxes into the cargo compartment. The shipping ticket said, "Oxy canisters, empty. Company material being sent to Atlanta. Routine cargo." He stacked them on top of and around 3 aircraft tires. When he moved one box, he heard a clink, felt objects shifting inside. But the ticket said empty. Must be empty canisters. He had no idea he'd just loaded the equivalent of 5 firebombs into the belly of the aircraft. Let me explain what oxygen generators are. These metal cylinders, about the size of a small thermos, provide emergency oxygen if the cabin loses pressure. Pull the oxygen mask, and you trigger a small explosive charge that starts a violent chemical reaction. The reaction creates oxygen for passengers to breathe. But here's the deadly part. That reaction generates extreme heat, 500 degrees Fahrenheit on the outside of the canister, hot enough to ignite anything nearby. And once started, it cannot be stopped. It burns for up to 20 minutes, creating its own oxygen, feeding its own fire. The generators in those boxes should have had safety caps installed, critical devices that prevent accidental activation. They didn't. They should have been classified as hazardous materials. They weren't. They should never have been on a passenger plane. But there they were. At 1:04 p.m., ValuJet Flight 592 begins its takeoff roll. 110 people on board, including that unlisted child. The DC-9 accelerates smoothly down the runway and lifts off into the clear Miami sky. For the first 6 minutes, everything is normal. The plane climbs steadily. Passengers settle in with magazines, conversations, maybe a nap. The flight attendants prepare for beverage service. At 1:10:03 p.m., the aircraft is climbing through 10,634 feet. In the cargo hold, something happens. Maybe turbulence, maybe the climb angle, maybe just the vibration of flight. One or more of those oxygen generators activates. The chemical reaction begins instantly, temperature spiking to 500 degrees. Pure oxygen flooding the cargo compartment. The cardboard boxes ignite immediately. The aircraft tires begin to burn with toxic black smoke. But this isn't a normal fire. In the oxygen-enriched environment created by the generators, everything burns hotter, faster, more violently than any fire the aircraft's designers ever imagined. Captain Kubek hears something. "What was that?" she asks. The fire is already attacking the aircraft's nervous system. Electrical cables running along the cargo ceiling are melting, burning, failing. "We got some electrical problem," she reports. Then, seconds later, with growing urgency, in the cabin, passengers in the forward rows notice heat coming through the floor. Then wisps of smoke, black, acrid smoke seeping through the floor seams. The flight attendants see it first. Their training kicks in. But there's no training for this. No procedure for a fire you can't reach, can't fight, can't stop. Shouts erupt throughout the cabin. "Fire! Fire! Fire! Fire!" A male voice, probably a flight attendant near the cockpit. "We're on fire! We're on fire!" First Officer Hazen keys the radio. Air traffic control responds immediately. "Critter 592, Roger. Turn left heading 270. Descend and maintain 7,000. The pilots begin the turn. They're trained for emergencies. They know the procedures. But this is beyond any training scenario. The smoke is thickening. The fire is spreading. Systems are failing one by one. The captain asks for the nearest available airport. The controller offers vectors, but the fire beneath them is consuming everything. DC-9's forward cargo hold is directly under the cockpit and first-class cabin. As the fire burns through the floor, it's destroying the cables that control the aircraft. A flight attendant's voice cuts through the chaos, professional composure finally breaking. The smoke is overwhelming now. Toxic fumes from burning plastic, rubber, wire insulation. The pilots have emergency oxygen masks, but the passengers don't. The oxygen masks won't drop. That system only works for decompression, not fire. At 1:12:45, air traffic control calls, "Critter 592, keep the turnaround, heading 120. Silence. No response from the cockpit. The pilots are either unconscious or the radios have failed. The flight data recorder stops recording at 1:12:48. The DC-9's systems are dead or dying, but radar keeps tracking the plane. It's still turning, descending, but no longer under controlled flight. The fire has severed the control cables. The aircraft is flying itself now, responding only to physics and aerodynamics. Two fishermen in the Everglades watch the plane in its death spiral. Steep right bank, nose dropping. No smoke visible from outside. The fire is contained within the fuselage. Invisible, consuming everything within. At 1:13:42 p.m., ValuJet Flight 592 hits the Everglades. The impact is beyond catastrophic, nearly 500 miles per hour, almost straight down. The airplane doesn't crash, it disintegrates, disappears. The force drives wreckage 30 feet into the mud. All 110 souls on board die instantly. Captain Kubek, First Officer Hazen, the 3 flight attendants, 105 passengers including that 4-year-old child. Their final 6 minutes of terror are over. But how did those oxygen generators end up in that cargo hold? How did such dangerous devices get loaded onto a passenger plane without anyone realizing the danger? The answer takes us back 3 months to a maintenance hangar where ValuJet was having work done on recently purchased MD-80 aircraft. ValuJet was the poster child for airline deregulation. Founded in 1993, they'd grown from 2 planes to 50 in just 3 years. Their secret? Buy old planes cheap, outsource maintenance to the lowest bidder, cut costs everywhere possible. Tickets so cheap that people who normally drove were suddenly flying. But there was a dark side. The FAA had found chronic maintenance problems. ValuJet planes were making emergency landings at twice the rate of other carriers. 3 months before the crash, the FAA secretly considered grounding the entire airline. Internal memos called ValuJet an accident waiting to happen. In February 1996, ValuJet brought 3 MD-80s to Sabertech's Miami facility for maintenance. Among the work, replace expired oxygen generators. The mechanics removed 144 generators from 2 planes. The maintenance manual was clear. If generator has not been expended, install shipping cap on firing pin.
But Sabertech didn't have safety caps. When mechanics asked, supervisors said none were available. They'd have to be ordered. That would take time. And time was money. ValuJet's contract fined Sabertech $2,500 for every day the planes were delivered late. So the mechanics wrapped tape around the trigger mechanisms, put the generators in cardboard boxes with no padding, tagged them as out of date, then signed paperwork saying safety caps were installed, a lie that would kill 110 people. The boxes sat in the hangar for weeks. Then, 4 days before the crash, a manager ordered the area cleaned up for a customer visit. A stock clerk saw the boxes. Nobody told him what was in them. He saw green tags. To him, that meant repairable. He assumed they were empty. He repacked them, added some bubble wrap, sealed them up, wrote on the shipping ticket, "Oxy canisters." Empty. Those 5 words, oxy canisters empty, turned potential hazardous materials into routine cargo. No warnings, no special handling, just boxes to be loaded onto the next plane to Atlanta, which happened to be Flight 592. The investigation revealed a cascade of failures. Mechanics who didn't install safety caps but said they did. Inspectors who signed off without checking. A stock clerk who guessed instead of asking. Ramp agents who loaded unmarked hazardous materials. An airline that prioritized schedule over safety. An FAA that ignored warnings. But the biggest failure? The DC-9's forward cargo hold had no fire detection, no fire suppression, nothing. The NTSB had recommended fire protection for cargo holds after a previous incident in 1988. The FAA rejected it. Too expensive, they said. $350 million to retrofit the fleet. What's the value of 110 lives? Within 2 weeks of the crash, oxygen generators were banned from passenger aircraft. The FAA suddenly found money for cargo fire detection systems. ValuJet was grounded, eventually disappearing into AirTran. Sabertech went out of business. But here's what haunts me. Everyone thought they were doing their job. The mechanics thought tape was good enough. The stock clerk thought he was being helpful. The ramp agents were just loading cargo. Nobody intended to kill anyone. But in aviation, intentions don't matter. Procedures matter. Truth matters. When you're responsible for lives, there's no room for shortcuts, assumptions, or good enough. Today, the cargo hold beneath your feet has smoke detectors and fire suppression. That protection exists because of ValuJet 592, because 110 people died for want of safety caps that cost a few dollars each. The Everglades gave up some secrets but kept others. Many victims were never fully recovered. The memorial in the swamp is all some families have, a simple marker where their loved ones vanished in 6 minutes of preventable horror. ValuJet 592 wasn't brought down by weather, mechanical failure, or pilot error. It was destroyed by a chain of small failures that aligned into catastrophe. Expired oxygen generators, missing safety caps, a mislabeled shipping ticket, a cargo hold with no fire protection. Each failure seemed minor. Together, they were deadly. 110 people boarded a routine flight on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. They trusted that the plane was safe, that the cargo was properly handled, that someone, somewhere would catch any danger before it killed them. The system failed them completely. 6 minutes from first sign of trouble to impact. 6 minutes that changed aviation forever. 6 minutes that should never have happened. This was ValuJet Flight 592. Our deepest condolences go out to the families and loved ones of all 110 victims of ValuJet Flight 592. May their memory serve as a permanent reminder of the importance of aviation safety.